Hello my loyal companions, welcome back to the channel. Today's video I want to talk about a very important aspect of Rogue Company, and that is how to improve your movement within the game. My goal in this video is to give you 5 tips and lessons to help you improve at your own movement, which will no doubtedly help you improve at Rogue Company. If you do go on to enjoy the video or you just want to see daily, educational Rogue Company content, make sure you drop a like and subscribe to the channel. But for now, let's get into it. Okay guys, so the first thing on the list of how to improve movement within Rogue Company is going to be how to move between cover rather than standing in the open too often. This is one of the things I see newer players making a massive mistake with, and this is moving out in the open and not thinking about where their closest piece of cover is. If you are moving between a large portion of the map and you do not have the ability to roll quickly into a piece of cover, or simply moving between cover to advance your position, you're going to get shot, especially as you go up against higher tier players. They'll be aware, they'll be ready to shoot you, and so you have to be careful with your movement and important with your movement to know exactly where you're moving. So in practice, what does this mean? I'm going to show you 2 examples. Here is the first example of one way of moving between these locations that is really not going to be the best. It's not going to give you the right kind of cover, and this is the kind of thing I see a lot of players doing. It's very straight, it's very narrow, and it doesn't offer you a lot of angles where you could duck in case you need to get into some piece of cover. This other example that I'm going to show you though is how to move across this location well. It's going to move you there and allow you just to be always ready if someone's about to shoot you and not have to worry about always being out of position. You can very quickly roll into position and be able to heal up if you've taken a few bad shots, or at least be able to take that fight should they come around the corner and push you. You need to be thinking all the time about where you're moving to. Not just the end location, but the different ways that you're combating that as you move through to that location. It's not, hey, I'm at point A, there's point B, just go a straight line towards it. You have to be actively thinking about where you're moving to and how you're going to move between it. And so being careful to move between cover is the first of one of the most important lessons that I'm going to give you here in this video. The second tip that I want to give you guys is actually sort of based off that first one, and it's how to be using your shoulder swap accurately and carefully and honestly correctly when you're moving between this cover. When you're moving between cover, you might be moving from the left to the right a lot, and that might mean that your 3P on people needs to change. When you're moving between this cover, there's no point you staring at a wall when you're doing it. You need to take that brief half a second or a second to actually look at what's ahead of you to assess whether it's safe. Now, when you get really good and get really comfortable, that happens so naturally. The way you move your camera, the way you move your body in the game will show exactly like the angles you need to see. But when you're just laying out and trying to get better, while you're moving between this cover, you need to be shoulder swapping to make sure you're getting the widest angle possible to be able to look at what's ahead of you. When you're putting these tips into practice, you may find that it's quite slow at first and maybe not as fluid as you might see from my gameplays. But with a little bit of time, a little bit of practice, and a little bit of map familiarity, you'll get really confident at this. You'll start moving between these covers from the first tip and having your camera in the right place all the time, using that shoulder swap from the second tip, and you'll be able to just survey the area and move through confidently. And that's one of the big things that people need to learn, and one of the sort of longest things you can learn. There's a few quicker tips in here to help you with some advanced mechanics, but those 2 are the core basics of movement. Making sure you are moving between cover and have angles to see as you move between it. Going on to tip number 3 then, this is going to be the infamous GSlide. Now the GSlide is a mechanic within the game that takes advantage of a kind of double roll. I don't know if it's intentional or whether it's going to continue to stay in the game, but regardless, I'm going to teach it to you now. The whole point of this movement is that when you roll off of a height and you land while that animation is still finishing, if you roll again immediately upon hitting the ground, you will slide. It's not another roll, it is a pure slide, and the best part of this and why it is used is because you can use it to change direction really easily. Instead of just rolling off and continuing your roll to be like an extended roll, you can actually 180 the direction completely, and that can be really useful at diverting enemies, putting yourself in different positions, or just baiting them out with a nice little peek. So to do it, it's very, very simple. All you got to do is when you roll off of a piece of cover, again, generally has to be quite a short piece of cover. If you fall from a height, this doesn't work because you finish the roll animation. But if you roll off a small piece of cover and then you roll again upon landing, it will form that slide, and wherever you are moving, either your WSD or your controller thumbstick, it will move that in that direction for the GSlide. Now I said that you could do this by doing a single roll after you've rolled off, but generally, in the way I learned is actually you just spam the roll button as you're landing. That is the way I learned, and eventually learned the timing of how to do it with just a single roll. But if you want to learn it off the start, just spam that roll button after you roll off a piece of cover, and you should pick up the GSlide fairly easily. Now on to tip number 4, and this is to use your environment properly. This kind of brings into everything that we're talking about in terms of looking at cover, using your angles, and even using the GSlide. But what you'll see in a lot of higher level gameplay is that people will be using height, jump ups, and other such things really to their advantage to make their movement seem really fluid. If you have the opportunity to jump up on a piece of cover, roll off, and continue a G-slide, that is far more optimal than simply just running around a piece of cover. What you'll do is when they know they're safe and they know that they can get away with moving quite fast, they'll use that environment to their advantage. They'll be jumping up on things and G-sliding off. They'll be rolling between covers. They'll be doing so much and jumping up on as many heights as possible to get as many big angles as possible. Because remember, the higher you go, in theory, the more you can see because you don't have obstacles in your way. And they'll be using that, using their camera, using their movement way more than you actually know they're doing. People don't constantly G-slide, jump up on unnecessary barricades because it's not important. They do it because it gives them some form of advantage, whether it be just speed of movement or whether it very simply just be another angle to be able to see from. But the way they do it and they mesh it together looks so fluent, and that's why it can be kind of confusing and why you may not understand why they're doing it. But generally, using the environment to your advantage, trying to get up on a bit of height, trying to use your G-slide as much as possible will just be the best way, and making sure you're warm, ready for some important movement techniques. Moving then on to the final tip of the video, it is going to be really aware of your surroundings, and this includes using your audio, using your video, and just being as careful and aware of what's going on around you, including having a bit of map knowledge in there as well. You can't move confidently, quickly, and fluidly unless you know what's going on. That's why I talked to you about the shoulder swap and being able to see around cover. It's why I talked to you about using your environment more, because you need to know what's going on. There's so many different ways you can do that. You can do it by using the sort of visual techniques I've talked about, by using your camera angles, by getting up on higher places, but you can also, and most importantly, do it through your audio. You have to be so careful about listening to what's around you, because that gives you an instant reaction. I would almost say never second guess yourself, especially when you're trying to work on movement and moving quickly. The moment you hear something, that's when you need to be on high alert. Say you're moving towards a location, you hear sound to your left, you need to instantly be putting your movement in a position where you're ready for a fight there. It is not simply, hey, I heard something, let me turn, because you may not be in the right position. Your movement and positioning comes first, and then comes your snap for the kill. This is very simple. Say again, you're running somewhere, you're moving between cover, you're doing the movement really well, and then you hear something to one of your sides. Instead of just instantly turning and trying to snap and kill that guy, you really want to be moving back, finding a piece of cover, and then doing it. And again, as you get better, you get more map knowledge, you get more awareness about what kind of cover's around you, that becomes much quicker and much snappier, and it basically looks like you're doing it all in one motion. But for the start, you know you want to be prioritizing positioning and movement over necessarily snapping to that kill. Because when you stop in the middle of the open to snap for that kill, you don't know if someone is already looking at you, whether they have a teammate there, or whether you might need to get in cover in case they have a better gun than you and they can outtrade you. So focusing on your positioning and movement first, and then looking at the kill is way more important. And one particular technique I want to talk to you guys about, and one I use a lot and you see a lot of good players use, is the bait out and roll. And this is less of a movement technique and is more of a third peak technique. What you'll see is if you do not know where enemies are, but you suspect that they are close, what you'll see a lot of players do is run out behind their piece of cover and immediately roll back. The whole point of this is to bait shots from your enemies, and the further you go out, the more you bait it out. Of course, you put yourself at risk, but revealing an enemy location might be enough for you then to potentially win that gunfight. They don't run out into the middle of the open and then just try and fight them head on. They run out knowing they want to roll back into cover and then take that fight on their own terms when they have information. This is only if you don't know where the opponent is. If you know where the opponent is, no point baiting yourself out there. Just be ready for that fight and be able to pre-aim that corner. But if you don't know where they are, that's a really good technique and one I use a lot, especially in 1v1s and things when people camp a lot. Being able to move around, bait out the enemy position is going to be really key for you. Okay then guys, they're the 5 best tips I have for you to improve your movement. This is the sort of thing that's going to take time. Changing the entire way you move around a map is not something that happens quickly, but being aware of the things I've talked about, whether it be just how you move, what cover you're moving between, how to use your shoulder swap and angles, how to use your environment, how to even use the G-slide if that's something you're interested in, or how to just be a bit more aware of your surroundings. All of those things are going to fuel into you being better at movement within this game. And despite how good of aim you have, movement is so much more important, at least in my opinion. I myself am a pretty decent player at this game, and it's not down to my aim. My aim is probably just decent, better than average, but not to the level of some people. But it's my movement, positioning, and timing specifically that make me stand out as a player more so than anything else. So movement is definitely important, can definitely get you far, and it's definitely something you need to work on regardless if you want to be better at Rogue Company. Okay then guys, that takes us to the end of the video, and if you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. You can also come follow me on twitch.tv/RADTHARGAMING to see live gameplay commentaries, guides, Q&As, and playing with viewers. All the links you're going to need are down in the description below, but for now, I hope you have a fantastic day. And remember, be loyal, be brave, be relentless, and I'll catch you in the next video.